Welcome to the Jumpstart Guide for the Canon Digital Rebel T2i. This DVD will guide you through the fascinating world of photography. Taking pictures is more than just pointing the camera and pressing a button. To get the kind of pictures you want, you'll need to learn a little bit about your camera and how to transition from taking snapshots to inspired images that you will cherish forever. It's not hard, and we'll show you how. First, we will take a tour of your digital camera. This includes how to get started and a quick overview of the most common buttons and controls. You'll learn all about the principles of photography, including shutter speed, aperture, exposure, depth of field, megapixels, ISO, white balance, focusing, metering, and much more. Shooting modes. Understanding how to use the mode dial on your camera can make a big difference in the overall quality of the images you capture. Learn about your camera's live view and movie recording modes. We will show you how to navigate and set the optimum menu settings and how to play back your images. General information for both compact digital and DSLR cameras is discussed in the Taking Better Pictures chapter of this DVD. This informative chapter will help improve your overall photography skills, focusing on composition, flash photography, and features a few worthwhile accessories to add to your collection. Get out your camera, get comfortable, and get ready to take great pictures with your new Canon Rebel T2i. Getting started. The Canon Rebel T2i features an 18-megapixel APS-C size CMOS sensor and a Digic 4 image processor for high picture quality. The ISO on the T2i ranges from ISO 100 to ISO 6400, with an expansion to an amazing 12,800, giving you control in low-light shooting situations. The Rebel T2i has a high-precision 9-point autofocus system and can shoot up to 3.7 frames per second for up to approximately 6 consecutive RAW files or approximately 34 full-resolution JPEGs. We will discuss the difference between a JPEG and a RAW file format a little later on in this DVD. The Rebel T2i allows remarkable Full HD video capture at resolutions up to 1920 by 1080 pixels. Movies are saved as MOV files and can be viewed in Full HD on a TV through the Rebel T2i's HDMI output. The camera also features a wide 3-inch clear-view LCD monitor and a new quick control screen button for easy access to frequently used settings. We will cover the popular controls and features on this DVD. We suggest spending a little time with your owner's manual as well. It's a good reference and can be accessed on location. To get started, charge your battery completely in the supplied charger. The performance of your battery later on is often dependent on the first charge. Locate the battery compartment on the bottom of the camera and gently open it to insert the battery, and close it again. Once the camera is turned on, a battery symbol is displayed on the camera's LCD screen. When fully charged, you will see this display. The display will change as the battery power level diminishes. If you see this icon, it means the battery is out of power. Power hogging functions, such as frequent use of the rear LCD monitor and live view, keeping the shutter release button pressed halfway, repeated autofocus operations, and slow shutter speeds drain battery power quickly. Temperature affects battery life. Cold weather can reduce the number of photos you can take on a single charge. Carry a spare battery or batteries on your body in an inside pocket to keep the battery warm and improve its life. The lens release button is used when changing lenses. Find the dot on your lens and line it up with the dot on the camera body. Place the lens onto the mount and turn clockwise until a click is heard. To insert a memory card, open the card compartment, gently push the card in place, and close the card slot cover. The T2i is compatible with SD cards, SDHC cards, and the new SDXC memory cards. Each memory card is a solid-state memory device, meaning there are no moving parts inside. The memory card functions as though it were part of the camera itself. Information is stored on it, and the camera reads the card very quickly. Each type of memory card is available in various capacities. For instance, a standard SD memory card can store up to 2 GB of image files. SDHC cards, also known as Secure Digital High Capacity cards, are offered in capacities ranging from 4 GB to 32 GB. The new generation of SDXC offer increased speed and extended capacities from 32 GB up to 2 TB. This new card is ideal for capturing and storing massive high-definition video files and then transferring them quickly to your computer. But capacity isn't the only concern when selecting a memory card. For every card format, you'll find slower, cheaper alternatives, and more expensive, professional, faster versions. These two cards offer the same capacity of 8 GB. This less costly card has a read and write speed of about 9 megabytes per second, which is fast enough when you're shooting one picture at a time. But for better performance, this more expensive card operates at 30 megabytes per second. So instead of this, my camera is now capable of this. If you take the odd snapshot now and then and prefer to keep the image files small, then a more economical, lower capacity, and lower read-write speed memory card might be for you. If you often utilize the continuous shooting mode of your camera, consider a memory card that has a higher capacity and a faster read-write speed. Memory cards can be used for a variety of purposes: computer data, gaming, MP3 players, just to name a few. Each device uses a unique system of storing data on the memory card, and the card must be formatted to suit that specific device. Format the memory card in your camera to suit the unique properties of your camera's information gathering system. You'll find a submenu called Format in the Setup menu discussed later on in this DVD. Always back up existing data stored on the card before formatting, especially if you've used the card in a system other than your camera. Buttons and controls. This is the camera's on and off switch. Flip it on, and instantly the LCD monitor will turn on and display the camera's current settings. Pressing the shutter release button fully will take a picture. Pressing the shutter button halfway will display a series of dots in the viewfinder that indicates the focus points. If live view is activated, the autofocus point looks like this. This is the main dial. Located on the camera's back are the cross keys, also called the multi-selector. The set button is found in the middle. Together, these controls navigate through menus, select focus points, and scroll through images in playback mode. This is the display button. Pressing it turns the LCD on and off. Pressing it while the menu is shown will reveal the camera's current settings. To return to the camera setting display, press the shutter release button halfway. This is the quick control button. This button directs the camera immediately to the quick control screen to easily navigate among a number of settings, including ISO, exposure and flash exposure compensation, drive mode, white balance, image quality, and more. To access the most control settings, set the camera to P, which stands for Program Mode. Use the multi-selector to highlight a setting, and then scroll the main dial to change it. Another way to navigate is by pressing the Set button when an item is highlighted. A new screen will appear where the settings can be altered. Once the new setting has been chosen, press Set to confirm, and the screen will return to the main menu. Some of the options, such as white balance, exposure compensation, and drive mode also have a dedicated button for easy access. The mode selection dial offers a number of program and digital settings. Automatic modes do much of the work for you, selecting the appropriate ISO, white balance, shutter speed, aperture size, you name it. Manual mode sets nothing automatically, giving you complete control. The Rebel T2i has 14 different shooting modes, broken into 3 groups: the movie shooting mode, the creative zone, and the basic zone, which contains several scene modes. The creative zone includes P for program mode, TV for shutter priority, AV for aperture priority, M for manual, and ADEP for automatic depth of field. The basic zone modes are creative auto, full auto, flash off, portrait mode, landscape mode, close-up mode, sports mode, and night portrait mode. We'll go over each setting in a later chapter. This is the menu button. Pressing it will display the camera's various menus. The Canon T2i has 3 shooting menus, 2 playback menus, 3 setup menus, and a menu called My Menu. You can navigate through the menus using the multi-selector, clicking right and left or up and down. Click the Set button to enter your choice. This is the Flash button. In creative zone modes, press the Flash button anytime to take flash pictures. The camera's built-in flash is located on the top of the camera. Learn more about how and when to use the flash on digital cameras in the Taking Better Pictures chapter on this DVD. Located on the left side of the camera, protected by a rubber cover, are a few terminals used to plug in cable attachments. The external microphone in terminal is located here. This allows you to connect an external microphone equipped with a stereo mini plug to the camera to record stereo sound. The sound recording level will be adjusted automatically. The terminal below connects the camera to an optional remote, which is ideal for reducing camera shake when taking a picture. The audio-video out terminal is found underneath and connects the camera to a non-HDMI TV, allowing a slideshow or to check images on a larger screen. It also acts as a USB terminal for direct image transfer to your computer or connecting the camera to a PictBridge printer and print out images from the memory card. The HDMI mini out terminal is used to connect to a high-definition device, such as a TV. This optional cable is available from camera dealers. An optional DC power supply can be connected on the other side of the camera. The camera has more buttons, which will be covered later on in this DVD. The features and controls accessible on the back LCD will be discussed next. Principles of photography. An understanding of the basic principles of photography is fundamental. We'll cover these principles and teach you how to apply them. Press the shutter release button halfway to activate the back LCD screen. This indicates the camera's shutter speed and the lens f-stop. These 2 controls can be altered using the manual, program shift, or shutter and aperture priority selections accessed using the mode dial on the top of the camera. Shutter speed. The shutter is the mechanical component to your camera. The sound made when pressing the shutter release button is the viewfinder mirror swinging up for a fraction of a second to expose the sensor. The length of time the shutter is open can be controlled by setting the shutter speed. Shutter speeds are measured in seconds, and more commonly, fractions of a second. 1/2000th of a second is very fast, and 8 seconds is extremely slow. It is possible to overexpose the shot if the shutter is open too long, and possible to underexpose if it is not open long enough. Slow shutter speeds capture movement with a blurred effect. For example, flowing water appears silky smooth at speeds slower than 1/8 of a second. However, a tripod must be used. Longer exposure is also helpful for night photography. Very short exposure is best used for action shots and can capture the moment in crisp detail. You can freeze flowing water in time with fast shutter speeds. Aperture is the lens opening on your camera that allows light to be exposed to the sensor, which is calculated in f-stops. When the shutter release button is pressed, a hole opens up that allows the camera's image sensor to catch a glimpse of the scene. The aperture setting impacts the size of that opening. The larger the hole, the more light that gets in. The smaller the hole, the less light. A very wide aperture is f2.8, and a very small aperture is f19. The smaller the f-stops number, the larger the opening. The larger the opening, the more light will enter. Depth of field is the amount of the image before and beyond the focus point that will be in focus. It is directly related to the aperture, or f number, because of the way the lens optics work. Using a high aperture, say f22 or f29, with a very small hole on the aperture, will mean that a large amount of your scene will be in focus. When shooting landscapes, a large depth of field is desired, so the entire scene appears in crisp focus, including the background, midground, and foreground. Smaller f-stops will allow faster shutter speeds and produce images with shallower depths of field. If you have a low aperture, say f1.4 or f1.8, with the aperture open very wide, only a very small portion of your scene will be in focus. This means that the foreground and background will be blurry and out of focus, with only the focal point appearing crisp and sharp. So in taking portraits, a small depth of field is often used to blur the background and reduce distractions from the main subject of the image. When using a low aperture value, the camera allows more light to enter, and so a faster shutter speed is used. Closing the aperture dramatically reduces the amount of light the camera sees, and a longer exposure will be required. In conclusion, aperture size and shutter speed work together to produce a proper exposure, and can be used to increase or decrease the depth of field, can stop action or show motion blur in a photograph. A wide aperture limits the depth of field, and a small aperture increases it. A long shutter speed can cause blurring, and a fast shutter speed can freeze action. Exposure is the amount of light which falls upon the sensor of a digital camera. If the shot is exposed too long, the picture will appear washed out. This is called overexposure. If the shot is not exposed long enough, the photograph will appear too dark. This is called underexposure. In some shooting conditions, you can get better results by manually adjusting the exposure value rather than use the one automatically set by the camera. This is called exposure compensation. Sometimes bright subjects, such as snow or a sandy beach, will appear darker in a photo than in real life. Adjusting the setting towards the plus makes these situations appear more natural. For darker scenes, adjust it the other way, towards the minus. The two primary controls a camera uses for exposure are shutter speed and aperture. This is the exposure level indicator. Enter this menu by pressing the Quick Control button, then scroll to it using the multi-selector control and press Set. Set the exposure compensation by pressing the left and right key of the multi-selector. Turn the main dial, located on the top of the camera, to set the auto exposure bracketing amount. Bracketing is used by professional photographers to have a little insurance when taking pictures. The camera will take 3 photos. It will take a picture that is properly exposed, and then just for good measure, it will take an image that is underexposed, then overexposed. You determine the degree of the under and overexposure used in the bracketing function. Another way to adjust the exposure compensation amount is by pressing the exposure compensation button and turning the main dial at the same time. Remember, the exposure compensation setting will not be automatically cancelled when you turn off the camera. so make sure you reset the value to 0 after taking the picture. The range of adjustment goes from +5 to -5 in 1/3 of a stop increments. Press the Quick Control button and highlight the item beside the exposure level indicator. Click Set and you will enter the Flash Exposure Compensation menu. Here you can adjust the flash exposure compensation if you did not achieve the result you desired. You can set the flash exposure compensation amount from -2 to +2 in 1/3 of a stop increments. This is the AE Lock, FE Lock button. This button allows you to lock your exposure settings. It is used when the composition of the image is different to the area you want to base your metering on, or when you want to take multiple shots at the same exposure. Focus the subject and press the shutter button halfway. Then press the AE Lock button. This icon appears in the viewfinder when the exposure is locked. Recompose the shot and take the picture. This can be very effective for backlit images. This button can also be used to lock the flash exposure setting over the desired area of the subject. Quality settings. This area indicates how many photos you can take with the amount of memory remaining on the memory card. The camera will also display the number of frames available before the camera's internal buffer is full. This is displayed by lightly pressing the shutter release button. The viewfinder shows the number of frames displayed here. The number of images remaining and the number of frames available in the buffer will depend on the image quality settings. The picture quality settings are displayed here. Press the Quick Control button on the back of the camera and use the multi-selector to highlight this icon. Then press Set to enter your choice of quality setting and image file formats. Your camera records images to its memory card. The size of both the card and the image files will determine how many images you can store. Your camera allows you to record pictures in JPEG format or in a much larger file known as RAW format. A RAW image is the unprocessed data that the image sensor captured, meaning it is not compressed or changed in any way. This format, when combined with image editing software, allows you to change the photo's settings even after you took the picture. A RAW file allows you to manipulate the white balance, saturation, contrast, exposure, and much more. A JPEG file is compressed and takes less space to store on a memory card. However, it cannot be changed after the fact. A RAW file will be a much larger file size than a JPEG, but the ability to make changes might be worth spending a little more money on a larger memory card. Your camera offers JPEG settings in small, medium, and large, as well as fine and normal. The difference between the fine JPEG setting and the normal JPEG setting is designated by the step stools on the icon. The smoother the icon, the higher quality the image, and the less compression. Fine JPEGs will allow you to crop or zoom into just a portion of the image. The small, medium, and large options designate the different print sizes. Here are two shots of the same image. The one on the left was taken with the fine JPEG setting, while the one on the right was taken with the normal JPEG setting. At this standard size, there is very little difference in the image quality. There will be a difference if you are trying to blow up the more compressed normal JPEG image or print just a portion of the photograph. Here are the two images side by side, zoomed in to only a part of the picture. The normal JPEG is considerably more pixelated, while the fine JPEG is still sharp and clear. If the memory card is large enough, we recommend shooting in the RAW plus JPEG setting. This records both file formats at once and provides JPEGs for quick review or email use, and a RAW file with all its benefits. As a basic rule of thumb, use the highest image quality and size for the pictures you take. This allows the greatest flexibility. If you plan on editing your photos with an image editing program, be sure to select the RAW file format for recording your photos. Focus. Focus is critical in photography. Nobody likes a picture they can't see. Your camera has a switch on the lens to choose between auto and manual focus. Unlocking the manual focus ring on the lens allows you to dial in the distance between the camera and the subject, providing an accurate manual focus. There are multiple autofocus modes. When using an automatic mode, the focus will be locked when the shutter release button is pressed halfway down. The area of focus is indicated with a square or bracket on the rear LCD, and with registration marks and dots in the viewfinder. The Rebel T2i has 9 different focus points. The 9-point autofocus system uses both normal and high-precision focus, depending on the aperture and available light. The 9 focus points can be chosen automatically or manually selected. Select a single point by pressing the AF Point Selection button and rotating through the options using the main dial. The focus points will move in the viewfinder. Here are different photos, each with a different focus point selected. Note how the focus of the picture changes. The default mode allows the camera to evaluate the scene and select the area of the image that has the most contrast, or the nearest area, which is how autofocus works. This symbol indicates the autofocusing mode. Pressing the autofocus button, located here, gives you a selection of 3 different autofocus modes. One shot means the camera will focus for one shot. It also requires the focus to lock before the photograph can be taken. It is best used for still subjects. Frame your scene, press the shutter release button halfway to set the focus, and then take the shot. Another great technique is to set the center point focus, target the subject in the center, and hold the shutter button halfway down so it focuses. While keeping the shutter button held halfway, readjust your composition and take the shot. Experiment with it and use this as a tool to help get more visually interesting pictures. AI servo means the camera will focus continually when the shutter release is pressed halfway. The exposure is set at the moment the picture is taken. It is very useful when shooting moving subjects when the focusing distance keeps changing. AI focus is a combination of the two. It will switch the autofocus mode from one-shot autofocus to AI servo autofocus automatically if the still subject starts moving. This is the best of both worlds, and we recommend using this setting for most of your shooting. MF displayed on the LCD means that your camera is operating in manual focus. Your camera also has different focus methods for live view mode and movie shooting mode, and we'll cover these later. Metering mode. Metering is a process where the camera takes a light level reading from the scene and selects the appropriate combination of aperture size and shutter speed to set the required exposure value. Your camera has different metering modes, which allow you to control what part of a scene the meter will take its reading from. To enter the metering mode, press the Quick Control button. Use the multi-selector to highlight this icon and press Set. Select from 4 different metering modes displayed on the LCD. Evaluative metering. This is probably the most complex metering mode, offering the best exposure in most circumstances, suited for portraits and even backlit subjects. It works by dividing the viewing area into a series of key zones and taking separate readings from each of them. The overall exposure is based on an algorithm specific to the camera, the details of which are closely guarded by the manufacturer. Often they are based on comparing the measurements to the exposure of typical scenes. It is set automatically in the basic zone modes. Partial metering is better if the background is much brighter than the subject. So for example, a person with light behind them or a sunset. It only measures the brightness in the 9% area around the center focus point. Spot metering is even more defined, as it meters only about 4% of the image and ignores the exposure of the rest of the scene. This is for metering a very specific part of the subject or scene. This type of metering is very useful for macro shots. Center-weighted average metering evaluates the brightness at the center and then takes an average reading from the entire scene. This metering mode is recommended for advanced users. The Rebel T2i can take a photo in a variety of different ways. The camera has 5 drive mode settings, accessed by pressing the Drive Mode Selection button located on the back of the camera. The modes are single shooting, continuous shooting, 10-second self-timer remote control shooting, 2-second self-timer, and finally continuous self-timer. The most common setting is single shooting, which means the camera will take one photo each time the shutter button is fully released. In continuous shooting mode, the Rebel T2i will shoot up to 3.7 pictures per second. When you press the shutter button completely down, the camera shoots continuously. Images are held in the camera's buffer and then saved to the memory card. Continuous shooting mode is useful for taking photos of fast-moving subjects where it is difficult to judge the correct timing to get a good photo. The number of images and the speed at which they are recorded also depends on other camera settings, such as flash, focus mode, and the speed of the memory card. The next 3 modes are related to self-timer shooting. The 10-second self-timer can be used in combination with an optional Canon remote control. This is handy for wildlife photography or in any situation where your presence could disturb the subject. In this setting, the camera will fire 10 seconds after triggering the shutter release on the remote control. There are a few different reasons to use a self-timer. First, to allow you to get into the picture yourself or take a self-portrait. Second is to eliminate camera shake. Many photographers using a long shutter speed in low-light situations will use this setting to reduce camera shake caused by pressing the shutter button lightly. Always use a tripod or steady surface for self-timer shooting. The 2-second self-timer feature will take 2 seconds before releasing the shutter. This is more than enough time to allow you to remove your hands from the camera and should prevent most camera shake. The last drive mode setting allows you to set the camera to take multiple shots with the self-timer. By pressing the up and down cross keys, you can set the camera to remotely take 2 to 10 shots continuously. White balance. Moving along the LCD, let's look at the white balance setting, which corrects for variations in color temperature. Different sources of light burn with different intensities and give off a slightly different color. This is especially apparent in photographs. Different intensities in terms of color temperature are measured in degrees Kelvin instead of Fahrenheit or Celsius. For example, the light from a match flame has a color temperature of about 1700 K, while a lightning bolt has a color temperature of around 30,000 K. A photo lit by a tungsten light bulb would have a warm hue to it. A scene that is lit by fluorescent lights has a cool tint. You may not notice color temperature with the naked eye, but it becomes more apparent in photographs. White balance calibrates by selecting an element in your scene, calling it white, and then adjusting all the other colors in kind. Your camera has different white balance preset options. Press the white balance button on the back of the camera, and the various preset options are displayed on the LCD. Auto white balance, the default setting, uses the image sensor to select the appropriate color temperature. This setting is pretty accurate under most shooting conditions. White balance presets include daylight, for shooting outdoors under direct sunlight with no shade or cloud. Shade, for subjects in the shade when the camera is in the sunshine. Cloudy, for overcast conditions. Tungsten, refers to regular household lighting. Fluorescent, for standard commercial lighting such as an office, store, or school. Flash, when using the camera's built-in flash, optional flash, or a studio flash system. Your camera has a custom white balance feature. To start, you'll require a white card. White cards are not all the same color and range from warmer to colder white. Place the card in front of the camera under the lighting conditions you want to use. Zoom in so the white card fills the frame and take a picture. By doing so, you are also taking the white balance reading. Be sure the image is properly exposed. Then select the Custom White Balance. Press the Menu button and click in Shooting Menu 2, down to the Custom White Balance. Click the Set button. Now select the picture just taken and click the Set button again and confirm the decision. Whenever the Custom White Balance setting is selected, the camera will use this picture for reference. Here is the same photo taken with a selection of white balances. You can clearly see how the white balance changes under each preset. Only RAW files opened in an image editing program will allow adjustment of the white balance settings after the image has been taken. ISO. We've already discussed how aperture and shutter speed affect the look of a photo. Those settings deal with the light and color information as it passes through the lens of the camera. ISO deals with how the camera interprets a scene once it has passed through the lens. Your camera's image sensor collects the light and color information from the scene and translates it into a photograph. Depending on the amount of light available, the camera's image sensor may have a difficult time recording an accurate picture. Your camera's sensitivity to light can be adjusted by changing the ISO setting. When film was the common media for photography, the initials ISO and a number indicated the sensitivity of the film to light. The higher the number, the higher the sensitivity, and the greater amount of grain resulted. Today, the same is true, except in the digital world, we no longer have to change film to change the camera's sensitivity to light. We can simply dial it in. This feature allows pictures in a setting that is darker by increasing the ISO number. It can mean the difference between getting the shot using available light or not getting it at all. Here's the same picture taken at different ISO settings. Cutting to a close-up, you'll see that as the ISO increases, the digital noise also increases. While a higher ISO value allows more light in a darkened scene, the trade-off is that the image will not be as crisp. There are some basic guidelines to ensure that a proper ISO setting is selected for a given scene. Select the lowest ISO setting when there is lots of available light and minimal action, and a slightly higher ISO for good light with fast action. This shot stopped the action using a higher ISO setting with a faster shutter speed. This photo, lit by a single candle, would not have been possible without using a high ISO. Remember to select the ISO that is most appropriate to the scene. Pressing the ISO button on the top of the camera will automatically show you the ISO settings on the LCD. You can choose from the following settings: Auto ISO, ISO 100, 200, 400, 800, 1600, 3200, and ISO 6400. Control over the ISO setting is only possible while the camera is set to a creative zone mode. The basic zone modes automatically set the ISO within ranges of ISO 100 to ISO 3200. This is one of the reasons we recommend the creative zone modes over the basic zone. In the Custom Functions menu, you can also expand the ISO settings to H, which is equivalent to ISO 12,800. This can be helpful in very low light situations. The Auto ISO setting allows the camera to find an ISO value that is most appropriate. If the camera is set to auto, the actual ISO speed to be set will be displayed when you press the shutter release button halfway. In Shooting Menu 3, you can set the maximum ISO speed used, ranging from ISO 400 to 6400 when shooting in Auto ISO. If you want to improve your photography skills, try selecting the ISO setting yourself. Remember to use a tripod or a stable surface when using a higher ISO setting. This will help to steady your shot and take a more precise image in low lighting situations. Picture Style. This is the Picture Style icon. Clicking on the Picture Style button, located here, will display the different style effects available. Standard provides a vivid, sharp image, mostly used in the full auto mode. Use Portrait to get a slightly sharper and crisper image with more natural-looking skin tones. Landscape offers a very sharp image with more vivid blues and greens. In neutral, no sharpness is applied, and it supplies more natural colors. Faithful is used for a subject being shot in a color temperature under 5200 degrees Kelvin. Monochrome strips all color and provides a more natural-looking black and white image. Auto Lighting Optimizer. Moving along the LCD, this icon stands for the Auto Lighting Optimizer function of the Rebel T2i. Enter this menu, and you can choose between 4 settings. If your image appears dark or the contrast is low, the brightness and contrast can be corrected automatically. With JPEG images, the correction is done when the image is captured. For RAW images, it can be corrected with the Digital Photo Professional software that came with your camera. You can choose from a low, standard, and strong setting, or turn this feature off. In the basic zone modes, standard is set automatically. Here's an example to compare the effect. As you can see, the brightness and contrast have been corrected on the image on the right. Shooting modes. Your camera's mode dial offers a variety of exposure modes, from fully automatic to manual control. Let's take a look at these modes, how to use them, and see some examples of photos taken in these modes. Creative modes. The Program Auto Exposure mode, indicated by a P, sets the shutter speed and aperture automatically. However, control over other settings, such as white balance and ISO settings, are still available. Program mode selects the optimum setting for the scene. Use this mode for the majority of your photography. It is possible to overexpose in program mode because some lighting situations can fool the camera. The camera also allows shifting the program. This means you can change the shutter speed and aperture combination set by the camera while maintaining the same exposure. Do this by pressing the shutter button halfway and turning the main dial. Making the shutter speed a little faster will help stop fast action. A small aperture, indicated by a higher number, increases the depth of field. Shutter priority mode. In shutter priority mode, select the shutter speed and the camera will automatically set the aperture. Simply turn the main dial to change the shutter speed. This allows you to choose the shutter speed that best suits your subject. Use this mode to stop the action of a moving subject. Here is an example of a shot taken with a faster shutter speed versus a slower one. Aperture priority mode. Aperture priority mode allows manual selection of the aperture, the size of the opening on the lens, while the camera selects the appropriate shutter speed automatically. Use this mode to increase or decrease the depth of field. Turn the main dial to select the correct aperture. You can choose a large depth of field with a great deal of the photo in sharp focus, or a small depth of field with the minimum in focus. This is the depth of field preview button. Press this button to stop down to the lens's current aperture setting. You can check the depth of field through the viewfinder, and it allows you to preview what is in and out of focus. Manual mode. Manual mode allows you to select both the shutter speed and the aperture size. Change the shutter speed by using the main dial and control the aperture setting by holding the AV exposure compensation button and turning the main dial. This allows full control over the camera's functions. This mode is best used by a more experienced photographer. The final mode in the creative zone is called ADEP, for automatic depth of field. In this mode, any objects appearing in the foreground and background will be in focus automatically. The aperture required to attain the necessary depth of field will be set automatically. It is great for shooting group shots and landscapes. Basic zone. The basic zone of the mode dial comes with a variety of pre-programmed scene modes designed to help capture the perfect moment. In this zone, certain settings are either fixed, restricted, or unavailable. The camera will adjust the shutter, aperture, and sometimes adjust the contrast, color saturation, and sharpness to shoot the perfect picture based on the scene type selected. Creative Auto Shooting Mode enables you to easily change the flash firing, blurring and sharpening, picture brightness, picture style, image recording quality, and drive mode. In this mode, press the Quick Control button to enter the settings on the LCD. Use the multi-selector to scroll to the item you would like to change, and use the main dial to change the setting. Press the Quick Control button to confirm your selection and start shooting. Fully automatic mode means the camera will make all the decisions depending on the scene. It will select the optimum shutter speed, aperture, ISO, and may also select whether the flash will fire or not. This setting is ideal for people who might be a little intimidated by all the settings. The Flash Off mode disables the flash and is very effective for candlelight scenes or where flash photography is prohibited. In portrait mode, the camera will adjust the shutter and aperture to make the background blurry while keeping the subject sharp. In landscape mode, the camera will typically increase the saturation on green and blue colors and will add some contrast and sharpen the edges of the outlines. Close-up mode is used when shooting macro shots, which are extreme close-ups. This will adjust the camera's lens and allow you to get very near the subject. Consider using a tripod and a self-timer or a remote control to minimize camera shake. The Sports mode will automatically choose a faster shutter speed to capture the action. This is ideal for moving subjects. The Night Portrait mode uses the built-in flash, but will delay the flash to record some of the lights in the background in a blur or light streak. The effective distance of the built-in flash is 5 meters or 16.4 feet from the camera. This can be very creative. The last mode is movie shooting, and we dedicated an entire section about this mode on this DVD to teach you everything you need to know. Live View and Movie Mode. This button on the back switches to Live View mode, meaning the image seen by the sensor is displayed on the rear LCD in real time. This is a fantastic tool for awkward shots or recording movies. However, autofocusing will take a lot longer than using the autofocus points through the viewfinder. To focus your scene, move the AF point superimposed as a white square by using the multi-selector and press the shutter release button halfway. When the AF point turns green, focus is achieved. Pressing the magnify button in Live View mode will zoom up to 10 times into your scene, so you can check your focus points. This does not zoom on the captured image. Each time when pressing the display button, a different information display will appear. Pressing it once shows you a bar with the shutter speed, aperture, exposure level indicator, shots remaining, and a battery symbol. Pressing the display button again allows you to quickly change settings. Press the Quick Control button to enter and change the settings for white balance, picture style, auto lighting optimizer, image recording quality, drive mode, and autofocus by using the main dial. Pressing the display button a third time will add a live histogram in the top right corner. One thing to note, when the exposure simulation icon is displayed in white, it means that the live view image brightness is close to what the captured image will look like. If this icon blinks, it indicates that the live view image is not being displayed at the suitable brightness due to low or bright light conditions. However, the actual image recorded will reflect the exposure setting. More control over live view settings can be found in the menus. Press the menu button to access the live view function settings in Setup Menu 2. The first option is to enable or disable live view. This determines if the live view shooting button allows you to quickly switch to live view mode. If enabled, the next setting can be very helpful, as the grid display option provides two types of grids. Grid 1 divides the screen in thirds. Grid 2 divides the screen in 24 areas. This aids in aligning horizontal and vertical shots to help compose your image. Metering timer adjusts how long the metered exposure setting is to be retained, ranging from 4 seconds to 30 minutes. There are 3 options for the autofocus mode in live view. Set to live mode, the image sensor is used to focus. Although autofocus is possible with the live view image displayed, the autofocus operation will take longer than in quick mode. Live face detection mode uses the same autofocus method as live mode, but it automatically detects and focuses on portrait subjects facing the camera. Use this when you are photographing portraits of people. Face detection will not work if the face is very small or very large in the picture. Quick mode uses a dedicated autofocus sensor in the one-shot autofocus mode, with the same autofocus method as with viewfinder shooting. Remember that the live view image will be interrupted momentarily during the autofocus operation. The small black boxes on the screen are the autofocus points, and the larger white box is the magnifying frame. When pressing the quick control button, this screen will appear. Press the right cross key once to select the autofocus points, which will turn blue. Then turn the main dial to select a single autofocus point. Aim the focus point over your subject and press the shutter button halfway. The live view image will turn off, the reflex mirror will go back down, and the camera will autofocus. When focus is achieved, the beeper will sound and the live view image will reappear. The autofocus point used to focus will turn red. Now press the shutter button completely to take the picture. Recording movies, buttons and menus. Another great feature of the Rebel T2i is the ability to shoot high-definition movies with manual exposure control. Movies are recorded in a QuickTime MOV format using the H.264 codec for video and PCM for audio. To access the movie recording setting, turn the mode dial to the camera symbol and the live view turns on. Pressing the menu button in this mode will display 2 new menus just for movie capture. Let's take a quick look here. Movie recording size allows you to select the movie's image size and frame rate. The first option is 1920 by 1080p with 30 frames per second, which is for full high-definition quality. To explain the different formats a little better, 1080 represents 1080 lines of vertical resolution, or 1080 horizontal scan lines. The letter P stands for progressive scan, which means the image is not interlaced. The term usually assumes a widescreen aspect ratio of 16 by 9, implying a horizontal resolution of 1920 pixels. This creates a frame resolution of 1920 by 1080. The next setting, 1920 by 1080 with 24 frames per second, is recommended for motion pictures and has become an established production standard for digital cinematography. You can also choose 1280 by 720 with 60 frames per second, meaning you are shooting in a high-definition recording quality, or 640 by 480 pixel, which is a 4:3 image at standard quality. The last option is crop 640 by 480. This new crop mode shoots standard definition footage using the middle of the sensor, as opposed to downsampling the entire frame, giving the equivalent of a digital teleconverter. It will give you a zoom effect of about 7 times. The frame rates switch automatically depending on the video system settings in the setup menu. Here is how it looks when the camera is set to PAL and NTSC. NTSC is the broadcasting system used in North America and Japan. PAL is mostly used in Europe. The autofocus mode menu lets you choose between live mode, live face detection mode, and quick mode, as discussed in the live view settings. The next menu, AF during recording, when enabled, allows you to autofocus during movie capture. Be aware, though, that by doing this, you might momentarily throw the focus way off. Shutter AE lock button allows you to change the function assigned to the auto exposure lock button and the shutter button when pressed halfway. AF AE lock is the normal option when you press the AE lock button to lock the exposure and you press the shutter button halfway to autofocus. AE lock AF is the opposite. Press the shutter button halfway to lock the exposure and the AE lock button to autofocus. This can be convenient when you want to focus and meter different parts of the same picture. Use autofocus, autofocus lock, no auto exposure lock when you don't want to autofocus. For example, when you are planning on taking a still image during movie recording. While holding down the AE lock button, press the shutter button to take a still photo without autofocusing. The last option is auto exposure, autofocus, no auto exposure lock. This means you press the shutter release button for metering and the auto exposure lock button to autofocus. In this mode, auto exposure lock is not possible. The last item in menu 1 allows you to connect a remote control to start or stop recording. This is possible with Canon's optional remote controller, RC6. Movie Menu 2. Movie Exposure. Setting the movie exposure to manual allows you to manually control shutter speed, aperture, and ISO setting for the recording of a movie. This is a setting recommended for advanced photographers. Under Grid Display, you can superimpose two types of grids on the LCD that will make composition easier. Metering Timer lets you change how long the metered exposure setting is to be retained. Finally, within this menu is the option to enable or disable sound recording by toggling between on and off. When it is set to on, mono sound will be recorded with the built-in microphone. But remember, you can capture stereo sound by connecting the camera to an optional external microphone. There is one more menu to mention. When the movie exposure setting is set to manual, a menu for highlight tone priority will be visible. You can enable this, which means improving detail. The dynamic range is expanded from the standard 18% gray to bright highlights. The gradation between the gray and the highlights becomes smoother. The ISO range will be ISO 200 to 6400, and the auto lighting optimizer will be disabled. Press the movie shooting button to return to movie mode. Before recording, remember to focus on your subject, either by manual focus or by selecting one of the autofocus options discussed earlier. To start recording a movie, press the movie shooting button. A red dot will appear in the upper right of the LCD to indicate recording. To stop, just press the button again. The length of the movie captured will be limited by the size of the memory card. The maximum duration is 29 minutes and 59 seconds, and the maximum file size is 4 gigabytes. Pressing the Quick Control button will enable you to set the white balance, picture style, auto lighting optimizer, image recording quality for still photos, movie recording size, and autofocus mode. Recording information will be displayed on the LCD. The semi-transparent mask will help you identify what is actually being captured. This mask will change according to the movie recording size settings. We do not recommend using autofocus while shooting a movie, as this may defocus the subject momentarily while it searches for the correct focal point. You can take still images while recording video by pushing the shutter release button. The image taken will be full size, and the movie will display that image for about 1 second. Once the picture is captured on the card, the movie recording function will automatically resume. To review movies on the camera, press the Playback button. Find the movie indicated by this camera icon and press Set. A playback panel on the bottom of the LCD appears and allows playback, forward, and reversing of the movie clip. During playback, you can adjust the sound volume on the camera using the main dial. This scissor icon allows you to edit out the first and last scenes of a movie in 1-second increments. Select this icon and press Set. The editing screen will be displayed with 5 icons. Select Cut Beginning. Click Set and press the left and right cross keys. The uncut portion is indicated with a blue bar on the LCD. Press Set when you are finished. Do the same for the cut end. You can play back your movie by clicking on this icon and save it by selecting Save. Choose from saving to a new file or overwriting the existing one. Confirm, and you have edited your movie in the camera. Menus. Let's take a look at the camera's main menus for recording and setup. The basic mode offers a reduced set of available menus. Because of this, we are going to set the camera on P, or program mode. The Rebel T2i has 9 different menus, including a custom settings menu. To access the main menu, press the menu button. The menus are Shooting Menu 1, 2, and 3. Playback Menu 1 and 2, Setup Menu 1, 2, and 3, and My Menu. You can navigate through the different menus with the multi-selector or by turning the main dial. Shooting Menu 1, Quality. Click the Set button to select from the many image quality and size options available. We recommend the RAW plus Large Fine JPEG setting because it offers the control of the raw image and the benefits of a JPEG for a quick review and email all at once. This bar shows you the megapixel count, the image size in pixels, and the number of possible shots you can capture on your memory card. Pressing the menu button brings you back in the menu. Beep on or off gives you the option of having an audible beep during some of the camera's operations. Turning it off makes the camera as silent as possible. Turn the beep off when shooting subjects that may be disturbed by the sounds such as babies or birds. Release shutter without card allows you to press the shutter release button even if you don't have a memory card in the camera. We recommend you leave it off. Turning it on means you could take a picture you really want to keep without storing it. Image Review. Image Review determines how long a picture will be displayed on the LCD monitor immediately after it is taken. If set to Hold, the image will continue to be displayed. Select Off to disable the image review altogether. Peripheral Illumination Correction. Depending on the lens, the corners of the picture may look darker. It is called lens light falloff and can be corrected using this menu. When shooting JPEG images, the lens light falloff is corrected when the image is captured. For RAW images, it can be corrected with the Digital Photo Professional software that comes with the Rebel T2i. This camera contains lens peripheral illumination correction data for about 25 lenses. When enabled, this feature applies the correction automatically for any lens with correction data registered in the camera. The next menu allows you to turn the red eye reduction on or off. With it on, the camera will fire a pre-flash, which can help reduce the red eye in photos of people and animals. Flash Control. Control of the built-in flash and external speedlights can be set through the menus. The first setting enables or disables the built-in flash. Next is the built-in flash function setting. Shutter Sync offers 2 options. First curtain means the flash fires right away after the exposure starts. And second curtain means the flash will fire right before the exposure ends. Combined with a slow sync speed, this feature can create some interesting effects. You can create a trail of light, such as from car headlights at night. With second curtain flash, 2 flashes will be fired. The first one when you press the shutter button completely, and the second one just before the exposure ends. Flash exposure compensation can change up to plus or minus 2 stops in 1/3 stop increments. ETTL2 determines how the flash uses the meter. The default is evaluative, which means the flash will use the evaluative metering. The other option is average, meaning the flash exposure will be averaged for the entire metered scene, as with an external metering flash. This setting is recommended for advanced photographers. Back in the flash control menu, the next three settings work only in conjunction with external speedlights. Let's move on to shooting menu number 2. Exposure compensation, auto exposure bracketing, auto lighting optimizer, metering mode, and custom white balance are the first 4 items on the main menu. Using the multi-selector and main dial with the selected menu controls the various functions as discussed earlier on this DVD. The next setting is the white balance shift and bracketing. It allows you to record 3 pictures simultaneously with different white balance color tones. If you press the Set button to get into this setting, you'll see a graph. Use the main dial to set the white balance bracketing amount. Use the multi-selector buttons to shift through the color zones of blue, amber, green, and magenta to adjust the white balance. When you are done, press the Set button. The shooting display will show you an icon for white balance correction and white balance bracketing. Color space allows you to select between the camera's 2 different color management systems, sRGB and Adobe RGB. Adobe RGB, a recognized color standard for commercial printing, provides a subdued image. It is recommended for advanced amateurs and professionals shooting in RAW mode. sRGB is the default setting and is recommended for normal shooting conditions. Picture style helps obtain the desired effect for an image. Choose between the different style effects by pressing Set. All the effects can be customized by changing the parameters, like sharpness, contrast, saturation, and color tone. Just click the Display button to access this submenu. For quick access to this menu, press the Picture Style Selection button on the back of the camera. Shooting menu 3. Dust Delete Data. Normally, the self-cleaning sensor unit will eliminate most of the dust visible on captured images. In case visible dust still remains, you can use this function. The Dust Delete Data is used by the Digital Photo Professional software that came with your camera. The last item in the shooting menu is ISO Auto. And as we explained earlier, it allows you to set the maximum ISO speed the camera will use when the ISO speed is set to auto. The Playback menu is the next menu item and will be discussed in detail in the next chapter on this DVD. So let's skip to the first setup menu. Auto Power Off turns the camera off when not in use. You can select between 30 seconds, 1, 2, 4, 8, and 15 minutes, and of course, off. To maximize battery life, we recommend the 30-second option. Auto Rotate will automatically rotate your vertically taken pictures on the camera's horizontal LCD display. There are 3 options. The first will automatically rotate your vertical image on both the camera's LCD monitor and on your computer. The second option will only rotate the vertical image on your computer. The last option does not rotate the vertical picture at all. Next is Format. To format or erase the memory card, press Set and use the right button to select OK. Pressing the Set button again will erase all the images on the memory card. It's a good practice to format the card in the camera after all the pictures have been moved onto your computer or other image file storage device. Be aware that even protected images will be erased. The camera also offers low-level formatting. Low-level formatting is recommended if the card's recording or reading speed seems slow. Low-level formatting will erase all recordable sectors in the card, so it will take slightly longer than normal formatting. To activate it, press the Delete button. File numbering. File numbering continuous allows continuous numbering of the pictures, in sequence, even after the card has been replaced. Auto Reset resets the file numbering to 0001 every time the memory card is replaced. This can be convenient if you want to organize images according to cards. Manual Reset creates a new folder automatically and allows the numbering to be manually reset to 0001 at any time. If you like to know how many photos you've taken, leave it at continuous. LCD Auto Off. This prevents the display off sensor on the back of your camera from turning off the camera's settings display automatically when your eye gets close to the viewfinder. Screen Color allows you to choose one of 4 different background colors for the shooting settings screen on the LCD. This is really personal preference, but here's how it looks in those different colors. Let's take a look at Setup Menu 2. LCD Brightness. This menu adjusts the brightness of the LCD screen. We recommend the default setting, as it does provide an accurate image. If altered, it may be difficult to judge the exposure accurately. This feature only affects the screen image, not the actual photo. Date and time. Set the date and time by using a combination of the multi-selector buttons. It's important to set the date correctly to avoid problems when you organize your images by date on your computer. Language. To change the language setting, click on Set. Use the multi-selector to scroll through the options and click Set again to confirm the selection. Video system. Your camera came with a cable to connect to a TV. This menu item allows you to determine the output format. North America uses NTSC. In most of Europe, PAL is the standard format. Select the appropriate format to view your images on a TV. Sensor cleaning. When you turn the camera on, the self-cleaning sensor unit will automatically remove dust adhering to the imaging sensor. However, you can disable this feature here or activate the self-cleaning manually. Sensor Cleaning Manual flips up the camera's mirror and holds it open to allow you to clean the sensor. We recommend that only a camera dealer or experienced professional clean the sensor. Cleaning the sensor can damage your camera if you are not careful. Live View function settings were covered earlier on in this DVD and can be accessed here by navigating through the submenus with the multi-selector and Set button. Let's look at Setup Menu 3. The Custom Functions menu allows further adjustments of the camera's settings. They are organized in 4 groups: Exposure, Image, Autofocus Drive, and Operation Others. Let's have a look at the first category. The Exposure Level Increments menu determines the increments for the shutter speed, aperture, and exposure compensation bracketing. The default setting is 1/3 of a stop. This setting can be adjusted to a less fine increment of 1/2 of a stop. Next is the ISO expansion setting. It adds additional ISO speeds to your camera. It enables an H setting, which is equivalent to ISO 12,800. The flash sync speed when in aperture priority exposure mode allows 3 settings: automatic, 1/200th to 1/60th second automatic, or 1/200th of a second fixed. In auto mode, the flash sync speed is set automatically within a range of 1/200th second to 30 seconds to suit the scene's brightness. The second setting prevents a slow flash sync speed from being set automatically in low light conditions when the flash is used in aperture priority mode. This is effective for preventing subject blur. Use the 1/200th of a second fixed setting when taking a night portrait to leave the background dark. Custom Function 2. Image. The first setting turns on or off the long exposure noise reduction function. This is a great feature for night photography. Set it to auto for 1 second or longer exposures. Noise reduction is performed automatically if noise of long exposure is detected. This setting is effective in most cases. You can also turn this feature on for all exposures of 1 second or longer, or turn it off. High ISO speed noise reduction. Choosing one of these options means the noise generated in the image will be reduced. Change the setting according to the noise level. Although noise reduction is applied to all ISO speeds, It is especially effective at high ISO speeds. Enabling highlight tone priority improves detail. The dynamic range is expanded from the standard 18% gray to bright highlights. The gradation between the gray and the highlights becomes smoother. When this feature is enabled, this icon will show up on your LCD. In autofocus assist beam firing, the default setting is enabled. The autofocus assist beam can be emitted by the camera's built-in flash or by an external EOS dedicated speedlight. It can be disabled when shooting conditions can frighten a subject, such as wildlife. Choose the next setting if you have an external speedlight connected to the camera. The autofocus assist beam will be emitted when necessary by the speedlight. Using the last option means that only speedlights which have an infrared AF assist beam will be able to emit the beam. This prevents any other speedlight which uses a series of small flashes from firing the AF assist beam. Mirror lockup allows the mirror to be held in the up position before the camera takes a picture. It's meant to minimize camera shake for macro and long exposure shooting. Custom Function 4. Operation Others. Shutter button, auto exposure lock button is the first item listed. The default is autofocus auto exposure lock. Choosing the next setting, auto exposure lock autofocus, is convenient for focusing and metering separately. Press the AE lock button to autofocus and press the shutter button halfway to perform AE lock. Autofocus lock, no auto exposure lock. In the AI servo autofocus mode, you can press the AE lock button to stop the autofocus operation momentarily. This will prevent the autofocus from being thrown off by any obstacle passing between the camera and the subject. The exposure is set at the moment the picture is taken. The last option is auto exposure autofocus, no auto exposure lock. This is useful for subjects which keep moving and stopping repeatedly. In the AI servo autofocus mode, you can press the AE lock button to start or stop the AI servo autofocus operation. The exposure is set at the moment the picture is taken. Assign Set button allows you to change the function of the Set button when shooting. The first setting is normal and the default setting. This means the Set button can be used to confirm menu settings. In the following settings, you can assign a different function to this button. You can select between using the Set button to enter quickly the menu for changing the image quality, changing the flash exposure compensation, turning the LCD monitor on and off, bringing up the menu display, or changing the ISO setting. Next is LCD display when power on, which when set to display on, will show the camera settings after you turn the camera on. The other option is selecting previous display status. If you press the display button to turn off the LCD monitor and then turn off your camera, the LCD will not turn on when you turn on the power again. This will save battery power. Add original decision data. Your choices are to either disable or enable it. I leave it turned off. Enabling means data for verifying whether the image is original or not is appended to the image automatically. That's all the custom functions. Now click the menu button to go back to Setup Menu 3. Highlight copyright information and press Set to enter. This menu setting allows you to add copyright information to your captured images. You can enter the author's name and copyright details. This information will be attached in the XF data of your image and show up, for example, in an image editing software. Clear Settings resets the camera to the factory default. It will remove all custom parameters and preferences. Choose between Clear All Camera Settings, Clear All Custom Functions, or Cancel. The last setting displays the firmware version of the camera. This is the camera's operating system. From time to time, the manufacturer may introduce a new firmware for the camera. It's usually posted on their website and includes instructions. Next in the main menu system is My Menu. My Menu Settings allow faster access by registering up to 6 menus and custom functions, which can change frequently. Press Set, and a submenu will open, allowing you to register, sort, or delete items. Enabling Display from My Menu means that when you press the menu button to enter the menu screen, registered menus will be displayed first. That's all for the menus so far. The next chapter deals with the playback buttons and menu settings. Playback mode, buttons and menus. The back of the camera has blue icons beside some of the buttons. Blue icons represent functions which are only available in playback mode. Press the playback button to see the pictures taken or view a movie. Scroll backward and forward through the stored images by pressing the left and right multi-selector keys or turning the main dial. Clicking the up button allows you to select how to browse through your images when using the main dial. Choose between 1, 10, or 100 images at a time. If the images were shot on different days, you can browse through them by date, or just decide to jump between movies only or stills only. Pressing the magnify or reduce buttons lets you zoom into your picture, or view them as an index with 4 or 9 thumbnails displayed. To delete some images in the camera, press the erase button symbolized by a garbage can. Confirm the decision by pressing the set button, and the image will be gone forever. We don't recommend deleting images in the camera. Wait until the images are viewed on a larger screen before committing to deleting them. Pressing the display button in playback mode will show your image in one of the following styles: single image display, single image display with image recording information, shooting information display, or histogram display. Histograms. A histogram is a graph representing the area of light and dark in a scene. The left side represents the dark areas, while the right side shows the brighter portions. The height of the peaks in a histogram indicate how much of the scene can be found at a particular brightness level. When a scene is too bright, most of the readings will show on the right side. When it's too dark, most of the readings will show in the left side. An ideal histogram for an average scene has peaks near the center, with some peaks present across the entire graph. The quick control button on the back of your camera, when in playback mode, functions as the direct print button. You can connect the camera to a PictBridge printer, which directly prints images from your camera. The direct printing process is done entirely with the camera while you look at the LCD monitor. The screen display and setting options will depend on your printer. For details, check your printer's instructions. Please note, movies cannot be printed. There are a variety of menu options for reviewing images in playback mode. These can help you to save images, alter them, or prepare them for printing. Enter the playback menu by pressing the menu button and turn the main dial to the blue tab. Playback Menu 1. Protect Images allows you to manually go through each photo on the memory card and protect it from accidental erase by pressing the Set button. It is indicated by a skeleton key icon. This means that if you decide to delete all the photos on the memory card, the files that have been labeled Protected will be saved and can't be deleted. Important to note that this setting has no effect when formatting your memory card. Rotate will turn an image that you have taken vertically instead of horizontally and display it accordingly. Simply press Set to get into the menu, find the vertical picture, and rotate it by pressing Set again. Erase images. Options are to either select and erase images or erase all images on card. But remember, once an image is erased, it cannot be recovered. But if the image was protected, it will remain on the memory card. Let's click on Select and Erase Images. Use the multi-selector and scroll to the image you would like to delete. Then click the Up button and mark the image. Further, scroll through and mark the images you wish to delete. To delete them, press the Erase button. You have one more chance to cancel, or select OK and delete the selected images. Print order, also referred to as Digital Print Order Format, or DPOF, allows you to define which captured images on the memory card are to be printed, including the number of copies and image information. In this menu, you can set the print type, date imprinting, and file number imprinting. You can select to print all or mark individual images. Selecting print type allows you to print an index sheet, which contains all the images on the card on one sheet. Selecting standard will print one image on one sheet. Slideshow displays all the pictures on the memory card, one after the other. Under Setup, choose the display time and repeat settings for automatic playback of images. Highlighting this item above, clicking the Set button, and using the up and down keys allows you to choose from either all images, date, movies, or stills. Pressing the Display button opens the submenu for the date option, so you can choose pictures from a specific day. When you have finished your selection, press Start and let the show begin. To quit a slideshow, press the Menu button. Playback Menu 2. Histogram. In the histogram menu, you have two options. You can select between Bright Display or RGB Display. Selecting the brightness setting will show you the exposure level distribution, overall brightness, and gradation. The RGB histogram is useful for checking color saturation and gradation. Image jump. When you are in single image display, index display, and magnified view, you can turn the main dial to jump through the images. In this menu, you can choose from any of the jump methods. Control over HDMI. When this feature is enabled, and you connect your camera to a TV via HDMI, the TV's input will automatically switch to the HDMI port connected to the camera. Then when you press the camera's playback button, you can use the TV's remote control for playback operations. This works only when your TV is compatible with HDMI CES, which is a function enabling you to control multiple HDMI devices with one remote control. Check this with your TV's user manual.
We've shown you how to set your camera. Now, let's take a look at the scene itself. Usually, there's enough light from the sun, a window, or another lighting source to properly illuminate your scene. There will be times when ambient lighting just isn't enough. Most digital cameras come with a built-in flash. Additional flashes and speed light systems can also be used to add much-needed light to a scene. Flash options on compact digital cameras are pretty standard. Auto flash activates the flash only when required. The red eye reduction feature helps to reduce the occurrence of red eye in your subjects by firing a pre-flash and closing the pupils of their eyes. Flash off disables the flash. Use this when photographing newborn babies or items behind glass. Flash on will fire every time the shutter release button is pressed to take a picture. Slow sync allows the camera to use an extremely slow shutter speed and still activate the flash. This allows the maximum amount of light from a darker scene before discharging the flash to light the subject. Rear curtain sync is a feature that is most often found in DSLR cameras. This sets the flash to discharge just before the shutter closes when a picture is taken. This can give the appearance of motion blur, which trails behind any element of the scene that was in motion when the picture was taken. Your camera may have a flash exposure compensation setting. This works in a similar way to exposure compensation, but will affect the brightness of the flash emitted. Use it to bring more detail into a shot and stop an overbright effect often seen when using flash photography. Add another dimension to your flash photography by adding a second flash. A slave flash opens up a whole new world of flash photography. This photo was taken using a single flash. Hold the slave flash out at arm's length facing the subject and it will discharge at just about the same time as the camera's built-in flash. It does this by reading the light that's discharged from the first flash. This is a great portable and programmable secondary flash source. And because two flashes are in play, it's possible to lower the discharge level so that not one spot in your scene is blown out. A good flash has its own power source and doesn't drain the camera's battery. Some flashes come with attachments to offer more control over the type of light produced. A studio environment provides a great deal of control over the lighting in a scene. A studio flash works much the same as the camera's flash, and in many cases can be connected to the camera to ensure that all lights in your scene function in unison. Using a studio flash instead of a handheld flash allows placement at a greater distance from our subject, and we can employ other options to change the nature of the light. For example, this reflective umbrella is a pretty standard accessory in the world of studio photography. The studio light is actually pointed away from the subject, and the light is bounced off the umbrella. Using professional lighting equipment can ensure that the scenes created in the studio suits the subject. Professional photographs, television programs, and films employ the same basic lighting principle known as three-point lighting. Three lights are used to provide illumination in the scene and to add depth to the image. The first light in the three-point lighting scheme is called the key light. This is the main light in the scene and offers the greatest amount of light. This photo was taken with only a key light. The brightness and placement of lights are critical. A key light can be bright or dim. If it's too dim, you won't be able to see enough detail, and if it's too bright, it will wash out the subject and create harsh shadows. A lighting plot will help you decide where to position the lights. The key is typically placed above the subject somewhere along this arc. One common placement is here, approximately 45 degrees between subject and camera. No matter where you place your key light, keep in mind that its location will also dictate the location of any other lights you may wish to add to the scene. To create some dimension, add a fill light. As the name implies, it's most often used to fill in areas of a scene that are not covered by the key light. These are typically areas of great contrast, such as around the nose and chin. Adding a fill light can bring a bit more light into the scene. It can soften those shadows and lower the contrast, so your camera can more accurately reproduce all the areas of your image. Typically, the fill light is positioned to mirror the key light. Here, the key light stands on the right 45 degrees between our subject and the camera. The fill light is on the opposite side. As with the key light, you can alter the effect by changing the position of the fill light. Consider placing the fill light higher, lower, or at the same level as the key light. The relationship between the key light and the fill light can have a great impact on your photograph. The beam from the fill light can be diffused or more direct. If you want an even more focused beam, remove the umbrella and use only the parabolic reflector. This will raise the intensity of your fill light. Three-point lighting is about adding depth to your photos, and a harsh fill light can eliminate that notion pretty quickly if you're not careful. As a general rule, for portraiture, start with a fill light that's half as bright as the key light. The lower the intensity of the fill light, the deeper the shadows and the contrast will be in the final portrait. The third and final light of the three-point lighting setup is called the backlight or kicker. The backlight is placed behind the subject, usually at a 45-degree angle from the background. Its purpose is to light the subject from the rear, providing definition and subtle highlights around the subject's outlines. This helps separate the subject from the background and provides a three-dimensional look. It's a small change, but it can add much dimension when done properly. It's a good habit to regularly transfer the images off of the camera's memory card. Most cameras will connect to a computer using a USB port. We recommend the use of a memory card reader instead of the camera itself. No matter how you access the memory card, it should appear on your desktop resembling a hard drive icon, because it is essentially a tiny hard drive. Transferring the image from the memory card to the computer varies, depending on the computer's operating system and the installed software. Open a new folder on the computer. Double-click on the icon for your memory card. A window will open up, showing the contents of the card. Open the folder that contains all the image files currently on the memory card. They may be contained in additional subfolders depending on how your camera was set when you took them. Select the image files and drag them into the new folder you created. When it's done, there will be a new copy of the image files from the memory card, and all your valuable photographs are safe. Format the memory card after placing it back in the camera. Now that the images are on the computer's hard drive, the best way to ensure that your digital image files are safe from accidental deletion is to archive them onto a CD or DVD. Most computers come with a CD or DVD ROM burner installed. Hundreds or even thousands of image files fit on a single disk, depending on its capacity. As an alternative to burning the disk yourself, you can take your memory card in to just about any place that prints pictures from digital media and ask them to create an archive disk for you. The best way to enjoy your photographs is to print them. You can take your memory card to a photo printing kiosk, select the pictures you want to print, crop them, get rid of any red eye, and perform many other tasks before sending them to the professional print station. If you prefer to print them out yourself, many home-based printers support a system called DPOF, or Digital Print Order Form. This system allows you to select an image for printing right from your camera. Insert the memory card or connect the camera directly to the printer and print at home using your own printer. That's all you need to do to ensure that the photographs you take today can be enjoyed now and saved for the future. Give your pictures a more professional look by following some basic principles of photography. First, consider what you're about to photograph. Think about an interesting composition. There's a huge difference between just shooting a snapshot and composing your shot to make your subject stand out. You want to evoke an emotion from the viewer. Pay attention to any distracting or unattractive elements in the background. Often, shifting the angle of the subject can frame an image in a more pleasing manner. For example, wait until a break in traffic to avoid partial vehicles appearing from out of your subject's head. Watch the position of the horizon, branches, and other distracting items. The rule of thirds is one of the most popular techniques for improving composition. Imagine that there are lines dividing the scene into 3 equal portions, both vertically and horizontally. In fact, many cameras include a feature that allows you to superimpose a grid over the scene to help you to visualize this technique. For portraits, a subject's eyes should always be no lower than this top line in the grid. This also works if the camera is turned vertically. This ensures that the subject's head is close to the top of the photograph, but is not cut off by the top of the frame. It also solves another common problem of giving your subject too much headspace. Place your subject in the scene so that they stand behind one of the vertical lines on the grid. This places them slightly off to one side of the image. You can still see them very well, but you can also see some of the scene behind them. Another decision that can change the composition of your photograph and create a more interesting scene is orientation. Horizontal, meaning the image is longer than it is tall, or vertical, meaning the image is taller than it is long. A photo of a single skyscraper works best in the vertical format, and a city skyline works best in the horizontal orientation. As a general rule, it's always best to walk up to a subject if you can. Simply zooming into a scene can cause several problems. First, if your camera utilizes a digital zoom, you'll lose image quality the closer you get to the subject. The more you zoom in, the more distorted the image will become. If your camera utilizes an optical zoom, you may not be able to get quite as close, but the image you record will be much clearer. A camera's zoom feature can allow you to take some pictures you won't otherwise be able to take, but it's no substitute for getting up close whenever you can. When you're photographing a slightly smaller subject, it's also a good idea to get as close to them as possible. This ensures that no one walks in front of you while you're taking the shot. Hunkering down to a lower level can result in a more natural shot. This is important when photographing small children or little animals. Remember the rule of thirds and keep the subject's eyes near the first horizontal line. If you're standing too high above a smaller subject, you won't get the same dramatic shot. No matter what the subject matter, to get a good shot, it's vitally important that the key subject in the photo always be in focus. Most cameras have an autofocus feature that lets the camera find the focus. If you're photographing people or animals, we like to see their eyes in focus. Even if the rest of the picture is a little fuzzy, If the eyes are crisp, we're happy. Depth of field, as we outlined earlier, is the amount of your picture that's in focus. It's altered by changing a camera's aperture setting. When the lens is as open as it can be, only a minimum of the scene will be in focus. This is most easily seen in a macro photograph. The macro setting of your camera fixes the aperture so that only the elements in the extreme foreground will be in focus. The rest of the scene will be out of focus, which tends to make the subject really stand out. Accessories can add impact to your photographs. Here's a few tools that you might want to add to your camera bag. Most cameras come with a quality lens. There is a plethora of lenses available that can be swapped out to provide a wider range of photographic possibilities. A telephoto lens is much longer and somewhat heavier than a camera's basic lens, but the pictures taken with a good telephoto lens can be spectacular. Here's how they work. A picture taken with a basic 50mm lens approximates what you'd see if you look at the scene with your own eyes. A telephoto lens of 100mm would let you see things as if they were twice as close or twice as large as they actually are. A 200mm telephoto lens would let you see things at 4 times their original size. While a telephoto lens increases the size of objects in your view, a wide-angle lens increases the amount of the scene you can record in a single image. They're lighter weight than a telephoto lens and more compact. A wide-angle lens allows the camera to see more of the scene before it. It's ideal for shooting panoramic scenes. They're also very good at showing depth with a subject in the foreground. A typical wide-angle lens might be 35, 28, or 24mm. A fisheye lens offers a 180-degree angle of view, giving you a distorted yet interesting image. Filters are designed to attach onto the front of the lens. There are a variety of filters that perform many tasks and can affect the final look of the image. A UV filter serves 2 main purposes. First is to filter out ultraviolet rays. Second, it's an inexpensive way to protect your lens from dust, dirt, and accidental scratches. A filter may become scratched and dirty, but it's far more affordable to replace a filter than an entire lens. A circular polarizing filter removes unwanted reflections from surfaces such as glass and water. It also intensifies the blues and greens when shooting landscape photos. Circular polarizing filters typically have a ring to change their orientation and control the overall effect. A tripod will help eliminate camera shake and is a must for low light and slow shutter speed situations. The 2 most important considerations when purchasing a tripod are its size and its weight. Size, because if your tripod is too small, it won't be suitable for your needs. And weight, because if it's too heavy, you'll likely leave it at home. An ideal tripod is both sturdy and lightweight. Get a tripod that is rated for a camera that's a little bit heavier than the one you currently use. For one thing, a good tripod can be expensive, and if you upgrade your camera, you don't want to have to buy a new tripod. A tripod often has to handle more than just a camera. Additional lenses and other accessories can add weight and make the system top-heavy. Weigh your camera, along with every accessory you're likely to use at once, to get a more accurate weight rating. A fluid head system tends to be more expensive, but helps to keep camera movement more fluid. When panning or tilting to frame a shot, you don't want a tripod that jerks the camera around. A fluid head tripod is also very useful for shooting in movie mode. Another tripod option for compact digital cameras is built out of several round segments that are connected together through a ball and socket system. They're flexible, sturdy, and they come in various sizes to suit a variety of camera weights. If there isn't enough light in a scene and another light source is not available, try using a bounce board. A bounce can really be any slightly reflective material, from a piece of paper to a professional bounce screen, and different types of bounce will add different flavors to your photograph. This bounce system springs open to reveal a much larger reflective surface, and it comes with 8 different options to change the light that enters the scene. These options change the quality of the reflected light and dramatically change the look of your image. Now that you've got all this stuff, it might be a good idea to find a place to keep it. There are many different styles and sizes of camera bags on the market. Keep in mind all the equipment needs to be contained and get a large enough bag. To keep your camera and photography equipment safe, You might consider a hard case, which can be configured inside. This is also a great way to store your camera equipment at home because it's stackable and protects from unnecessary pressure on the equipment. It's also a good idea to have more than one bag at your disposal, one that carries your camera and the lenses and accessories you use most often, and another that gives space for more accessories when you want to carry more. Thank you for taking the time to watch this DVD. We hope your learning experience was fun and easy, and this video has taught you some helpful tips and guidelines to improve your photographic world.